Hello everyone, in this video we will go over the different types of cell references in Excel. A cell reference in Excel basically refers to a particular cell or range of cells within a formula that you use instead of a value. So for example, these rectangles that you see in your Excel spreadsheet are basically cells. So each cell has an address. The address is listed by columns and rows. So for example, in Excel you have A, B, C, D. All of these are your column names, and you have your rows, row 1, 2, 3, and so on. So for example, the address of this cell is cell O4. So this is the cell address. The address of this cell is M16. So a cell reference has two parts: the column reference, which is the alphabet of the column, and the row reference, which is the numeric portion that we just discussed. Now in Excel, there are three types of cell referencing: relative, absolute, and mixed. A relative cell reference is a cell reference that changes automatically when the formula is copied to another location. So for example, we're going to add this value here in C63 and this value here in cell F63. So we're going to use these two values and add them in cell J63. So here, instead of typing in the values, if I use a formula in Excel, formulas start with an equal to sign. So equal to, now I'm going to insert the address. So C63 plus F63. So this is a formula that I used to add up these two values. Now, relative cell reference is a cell reference that changes when the formula is copied to another location. By default, Excel uses relative cell referencing. So for example, if I copy this formula, since I'm using Mac in order to copy the formula, I press and hold Command key and the alphabet C in your keyboard. Then I'm going to paste it in cell J64. So again, I'm pressing the Command key and clicking on the V key in your keyboard. So let's take a look at the address that we see here. You'll notice the address is right here, or you can just double click on it and it will show you the address. So notice how the address has changed from C63 to C64 and from F63 to F64. So this is an example of relative cell reference. So a relative cell reference is a cell reference that changes automatically when the formula, and this applies to also functions. If you use a function in Excel and it's copied to another location, you will see that it changes the address of the cell. Now the second type of cell reference is an absolute cell reference. The difference between relative cell reference and absolute cell reference is that the way the absolute cell reference is set up, if you copy and paste it in another cell, it will not change the address. So for example, let's use the same values here. So here our formula was C63 and F63. So in absolute cell referencing, what we need to do is we need to insert the $sign from your keyboard. So I'm pressing and holding the Shift key and clicking on number 4 where I see the $sign, and we're going to insert the $sign before the numeric portion of the cell reference as well. So let's do that for the second cell address. Now I've set up my absolute cell reference. I'm just going to press enter. You get the same value here, but the difference here is, as we discussed, if I copy and paste it in another cell, it will not change. It will still remain the same formula I inserted. And this is because of the fact that we inserted these $signs before the column and the row addresses. So this is an example of absolute cell reference. So when an absolute cell reference is used, a cell reference does not change if the formula is copied to another location. The third type of cell reference is a mixed cell reference. Here you have a combination of relative and absolute cell references. So it can look something like this. Using the same formula that we saw earlier, if I remove the $sign from the numeric portion and I press enter, and if I copy and paste this formula in another cell, let's take a look at what has happened. So here, since we have the $sign before the alphabet portion of the formula, it does not change even when it's copied to another cell. But the row address changes because there is no $sign before it. Same thing here. The column address did not change because of the $sign before it, but the row address changed. We can try another example. So let's type the $sign before the row address and remove it from the columns. So here again, if I copy and paste it right here, let's see what has happened. The column address does not change. It's still using values from column C, and because we inserted the $sign before the row address, that row has not changed as well. Even though this formula is in J65. It has not changed because we inserted the $sign. So a mixed cell reference is a combination of the relative and absolute cell references. And so here in our example, the row address is absolute, whereas the column address is relative. So cell referencing in Excel is a very useful feature, especially when you need to copy formulas and paste it across ranges in a spreadsheet or in another cell.